All right, high rollers, today, very excited to have this guy on with us. He's a noted professional, been beating the game since the early 90s. He's coached some of the biggest names in poker, including the likes of Phil Galfond and David Benefield. Name a poker publication, he's written for it, and he's authored 2 poker books, including the very popular Elements of Poker. His 3rd book, Painless Poker, is on its way early in the new year. Tommy Angelo, our guest today. Tommy, welcome. Thanks for joining us, man.
Good morning, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I went to your website, TommyAngelo.com, and I love the series of quotes that pop up on the homepage. Wondering if I could read a few right now and get a quick response on each.
Sure.
Okay, the first 2 may go together. To win at poker, you have to be very good at losing. And poker is a process of illumination.
Well, I've always found that once somebody gets pretty good at the game, they put in their hours and get a few years under their belt, that at that point, if they want their earn rate to go up, the most efficient thing to work on then is consistency. Yeah, you want your A game to keep getting better all the time, but if somebody has some big leaks in their game by playing too long and going on bankroll tilt and various things like that, that's really where the profit is. And so that's what I mean by to win at poker, you got to be very good at losing, because people underestimate the importance of how well we perform when we're losing. And through the coaching I've done and through all the pitfalls I've been through personally as a player, I just found that to be an area that most people don't focus enough on.
This one's got to be about coaching, I would assume. It says, Jesus says, love the enemy. Buddha teaches us how.
Actually, that one is from Painless Poker, and there's a fair amount of Painless Poker that is, it's about poker, but it's about using poker as a way to better ourselves as human beings all around. And so that's kind of what that was about. That's taken out of context a little bit, and the passage is really about the whole idea that Jesus and Buddha do teach the same message at one level, but there is a big difference in the amount of instruction you get from Buddha on what you can actually do to change yourself within. Jesus is kind of like, okay, this is how you should behave, but there isn't really an instruction manual, and that's the point I was making with that quote.
Okay, and this one jumped out at me as well. It says, while the game forever changes, the pain remains the same.
Well, you're picking some great ones. That one there is the actual official hook line of Painless Poker.
Okay.
About half of those are from Painless Poker, and I'll just say that right now that little movie is a work in progress. There's only about 15 or 20 on there. There's going to be about 120. And it's kind of interesting to see them, to hear you mention them out of context. But the context there is that part of the book is memoir. A small part of it is memoir. Most of it is fiction. And it's a fictional setting where I'm teaching 7 people for a couple days about Painless Poker. And in the setup, when I'm talking in memoir, where I'm kind of like talking to the reader, I tell some stories about my past and about pain, about what it was like in the before time, before internet poker and the poker boom. And then I conclude that section by saying that, through all these years and everything I've learned, the game forever changes, but the pain remains the same. Part of the point of that is that it always feels like things are kind of in a state of stasis. A lot of times, like you're playing in a certain place for a couple years and it seems like this is never going to change, or No Limit Hold'em is the game, and then all of a sudden PLO is the game, and before that, nobody was playing No Limit. And I've been watching this for so long, and I realized that it changes fast all the time. It isn't like poker suddenly started changing with the poker boom. It's always been that way. And that's why when I teach guys, it's like, yeah, it's important how you're playing now. It's important what the state of poker is. But the pain of poker is consistent. The pain of losing, the pain of playing bad, dealing with assholes, that never changes. And that's why I think that's the most important thing to work on.
Well, a lot of great poker quotes. You want to go check them out. It's at TommyAngelo.com. You've got a new poker book coming out. We just talked about it here, Painless Poker. I know you have a pretty successful teaching method called the Tiltless program. Is Painless Poker, I know it's a psychological book, but is Painless Poker along those lines? Because to me, you just mentioned it, dealing with assholes, dealing with bad play, just overall frustration, your card dead. To me, tilt equals pain, right? That's pain.
Absolutely. And the book mirrors my coaching program very closely on purpose. So if someone hires me to coach them, we do like a 4-day program. And it's kind of a big deal. There's a lot of pre-work and follow-up. And what happens at the Painless Poker Clinic in the book, which is a fictional setting, is these 7 archetypal characters beam in, like magically, boom, they just show up, and I coach them for 2 days. And we go through a lot of the material that I go through with clients, and then there's pushback, there's argument, there's debate, just like I do with clients. And so that is a fairly real depiction about the type of stuff I talk about with people and their reactions to it. The big difference is that none of the people at the clinic volunteered. None of them are paying me. They're all just like showed up. What really drives the story a little bit is that each of them are beamed in at their moment of greatest pain. So you got one guy who just busted out of the main event of the World Series, and another guy who, he was on bankroll tilt playing way higher than he should online, and he gets disconnected and blows his whole bankroll. I mean, every one of these guys has gone through the shit at that moment that they get beamed in. And all of a sudden we're sitting there and we just talk for 2 days, and each of them tell their life story, and then I give a lot of advice, and we just debate a lot of stuff, and then there's some arc of character after that.
I'm wondering why you decided to start at the at the top of their pain threshold. Is that because that's when they're easiest to mold into basically a newer, better player?
Oh, well, actually, it's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. But if you really think about it, this is another way that it sort of reflects my coaching, because a lot of times when guys hire me, it's when they've been through the crap a number of times. They've been up and down a couple times, and they're like, man, I really want to try to do something about all this agony. So it isn't like people hire me at their moment of greatest pain, but a lot of times people come to me during or soon after a very low period. But no, that really wasn't why I chose it like that. I don't know how it happened like that. It was just, I wanted to have all those people there, and I tried writing it to where each of them shows up one at a time, and I tried different methods, and it just seemed easier to just have them all show up in a flash.
I'm often surprised at the poker table. I'm deeply interested in the psychological aspect, especially of cash games. In the trenches. Doesn't matter what stakes. You're at the table. You can be there as long as you want, but you always run into a guy that has all the chips, right? He's been winning, and he's got talking chips. He's talking. He's the best player in the room, and all of a sudden, something happens. Could be anything, really. That player goes on tilt. I mean, the game is so psychological, and before you know it, those chips are gone. I mean, I think a lot of players neglect this aspect of the game, don't even realize when they're on tilt.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's 2 angles to what you just said. One is from the perspective of when we don't realize we're on tilt. And then there's the other perspective, which is as a professional player, I see my job is to watch every single hand and watch every single bet and be completely in tune with anybody who might be just a little bit fractured mentally. Because a lot of times you don't see it overtly, but a guy loses a hand and you can feel him percolating over there, and then all of a sudden he 3-bets from the blind, and you're like, okay, I think he might be out of line here. Because of a hand that happened 2 hands ago that he didn't even pry about. So yeah, sensitivity to every little tilt fluctuation, especially no limit, I think is essential.
I'm wondering about that pain threshold. I find that a very interesting concept. I guess it's different for everybody, right? Some people are more delicate, whereas some people can go longer and just experience that pain for longer periods of time.
Yeah, that's more human nature than anything. Now, with poker, you can train yourself. Once you set your sights on pain reduction as an objective, you can improve at that consciously. But generally speaking, some people are just more unhappy than others in just how they're set up. And so those people are going to be more likely to, lose their cool at poker.
You mentioned that a lot of players approach you for coaching when they're at their lowest. I'm wondering if we could turn the tables on that. Players that are running good and doing well, do they neglect the coaching aspect because they're in, their A-game mode? Or is that the time that they should continue with the coaching to take it up a notch?
Oh, I can't really speculate on that. I mean, I'm sure there are times when you're running good. It's generally not when you think, oh, man, I need help. I went through that a million times, and I detail that in the book about how anytime I would run good for a period of time and I would get my bankroll pumped up, I would somehow find a way to destroy it. I didn't want anything too good to happen to me. But anyway, it's just a natural part of the up and down pain cycle that when we hit a low point, that's when we have this some people have a natural urge to reform. And, for me, it was like smoking cigarettes. It was like anytime I hit a real deep funk in poker when I was grinding all the time, and then I would go into a hole for 3 days, and I'd come out, I was like, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to start eating, I'm going to start exercising. I've watched my clients go through those same cycles and write me letters and talk to me about it after the fact so many times. It's just, that's the natural course of things. We don't tend to seek out help and assistance when everything's going well.
You know, there's nothing worse than leaving a casino down a few $100, and when you're in the car driving home, you think about it, you realize that you were put off somehow, that maybe somebody said something, maybe you didn't make the flush, whatever happened, something put you off, and that causes me especially to play a little bit more loose and reckless to get it back mode. You know, I want to get that money back, and It's almost as if money means nothing at the poker table. When I'm in that car going home, I'm getting, damn, that was a lot of money. What happened there? Nothing worse than playing well all day and then going on a bit of a psychological rant and losing it all.
You hit on the key thing, which is those conversations in the car with yourself. In fact, Painless Poker starts with the most painful weekend of my life, and the main plot is about me being insane driving home. I mean, it's really about that. And so anyway, I can relate to that, but you got to put that time to use, put it to intentional use toward improvement. So when you ask the question, okay, what happened there? Like you just said, well, what's the answer? And don't tell me, you got to tell yourself, and you got to come up with some method, a slow, gradual way of improving. That's why one of my little sayings is that walking away is easy, the hard part is standing up. The reason I started Elements of Poker basically with the topic quitting.
I was going to ask you about, let me ask you about that, because that was my very next question. I was going to say, by the way, Painless Poker, your new book coming out in March. So early in the new year, put it on the calendar, get that book. Now, in Elements of Poker, you cover a lot of topics, quitting, position, reciprocality, professionalism, tilt, bankroll, attitude, and mindfulness. It's funny that you brought up quitting, because that's a key issue. Like, sometimes I'm at the I think you're talking about when to leave a game. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about having the ability to leave the game, yes.
Oh, man, that's one of the toughest parts, because sometimes you're sitting there, and especially if I'm up. I'm sitting there, and I play low stakes. I'm up a couple $100. I mean, that's a good day for me. And you feel it, right? You know you're tired, the fun has stopped, and you play one or two more rounds, and you may drop 60 or 70 of those $200, and it's like, what did I do? As soon as I felt tired, I should have just got up and left.
Yeah. Well, that's why I started Elements of Poker with quitting, because I think it is the most important topic in poker for non-tournament players. So the key to good quitting is listening to the quitting voice, which we all have. So in that situation you described, there was a point, and it might have only been a very brief moment, where you're up to 200 or whatever, and you had the thought, I should quit now. And then we don't quit then, and then when we lose after that, we beat ourselves up, not just for staying and losing, but because the voice had told us to quit. If the voice never tells you to quit, well, you're fine, and you probably don't need to quit for whatever reason. But as soon as you get that urge, it's not even an urge, it's just like a hunch. I should quit now. It doesn't matter what the reason is. This is an Elements of Poker. You can evaluate it and analyze it later, but you got to train yourself to listen to that voice. And it's one of the most empowering things there is in all of poker, because if somebody has trouble with this, and most people do at some point, the first time you do it, and you just like all of a sudden you're in your car in a situation where you never used to quit, and then you realize, wow, I did it once, I can do it again, maybe I can do it again, and then you might have 10 more bad quits, but then you're still remembering, wow, I know how to do this, I can do this. It might take years. I dedicated my life to learning how to quit, because I was, the way I put it in the book is I had two basic quitting policies. I would quit when I ran out of money and no one would lend me any, or if the game broke up. That was it. That's the only time I ever quit. And now, it's been a long time and I've done a lot of things, but at this point, I could go play and sit there and play for 2, 3, 4 hours, fold every hand if it was correct to do so, and quit at any point.
Wow.
But that has been my lifelong objective. And it's crazy what it's done to my game. It's like I actually enjoy playing poker more because I'm completely safe and I'm completely free. There's nothing bad that can happen to me emotionally. And it's pretty amazing.
How do you handle positivity versus negativity at a cash game? Say, sometimes you're sitting there and you think you're playing good and you get in a hand, the guy's got a flush draw and you've got a set, and there's one card to come, and your gut tells you that he's going to hit it, and he hits it. And sometimes your gut tells you he's going to miss it, and he misses. Do you find that weird, or is that just the way the cards come out?
Well, I have been at this a long time, and there was a time when I felt that way, but it's been a long, long time. But I can totally relate to what you're saying, but I can't really talk about it currently as if it happens because it's just like not in my range at all. If I think the spade might come, let's say we're all in on the turn, okay, and the cards are up, and the guy needs a spade. Well, at that point, the only thing I'm thinking about is what am I going to do if he hits? Am I going to rebuy? How much am I going to rebuy? Am I going to quit? Am I going to take a break? I have really no emotional involvement.
Where I'm more kind of worried about losing the money, you're saying, hey, just a unit. I'm going to get more and play again if I want.
Yeah. But I think it's important, though, for you to start thinking about these sort of mental bumps that you go through as something that you want to try to lessen and make them smaller and just become more matter of fact, more objective, and just less emotionally involved with any of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting stuff. Now, you have a video series, The Eightfold Path to Poker Enlightenment. Just wondering, Tommy, are you big on the Buddha? And if so, I mean, how would the Buddha approach poker from the time, let's say he sits down in a cash game? What's he thinking at that moment?
Well, I actually am a practicing Buddhist. I don't call myself a Buddhist because that's just a weird word, but I do meditate every day, and I do read the readings every day, and it's been a big part of my life for the last 13 years or so. I wrote one thing called Reconciling Buddhistic Behavior with Poker or something like that, which is about how if one takes a mindset of compassion and connectedness to the poker table, it's possible to play this game, which is inherently aggressive, without an aggressive attitude and without sending out any negativity toward anyone at all. So I do think it's possible to play poker within a Buddhistic mindfulness mindset.
That's very interesting, because I try to have fun at the poker table, and you see some very, very angry people. And especially when they start taking it out on the dealers, I just sit there and wonder, boys, girls, this is a game. I mean, we're here to have fun. I mean, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's what we love about poker, though. I mean, anybody can sit down with anybody, and you can be upset, you can be happy. I like that part. I mean, that's one of the things I just love about being in that circle. It's just so alive and changing all the time. We don't have to be drawn down by other people's unhappiness, and we don't have to get sucked into their drama.
Well, I can't wait to get this new book. The book Elements of Poker received a lot of praise and acclaim. Ed Miller says it was an awesome book filled with practical poker wisdom, and that's Elements of Poker. And Ed Miller should know what he's talking about. He's written several books himself. You got many testimonials. I'm wondering what gives you more fulfillment, the writing or the coaching?
Writing.
Really?
Nothing against any of my clients. I love the coaching. I really do. Fulfillment is an interesting word. I get a great deal of fulfillment out of the coaching because I've just made some wonderful friends. I mean, there are a lot of people who started out as clients, and then we continue the coaching, and now when we talk or whatever, it isn't like I'm coaching them. We're just friends, and I have a lot of people like that. And I feel very fortunate to have learned some things and been able to pass them along that have helped some people. But when it comes to what really turns me on, it's writing. That's what I want to do pretty much into the unforeseeable future.
Well, continued success with that. You're on your third book now, a poker book. I'm sure many more to come. By the way, I know you play some music. Now, I personally am an old-time country music fan. George Jones, Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard. Love those guys. I know you shared the stage with the likes of Willie Nelson. I mean, what was that like? That's like me sitting down at the poker table with Phil Hellmuth, which I did, by the way, at the Colossus. So that's off my bucket list. But that must have been something special for you.
Yeah, and Randy Travis and even McIntyre.
Wow.
The band I was playing in, this is like mid-'80s. The way it works in country, as you know, is that when they go on tour, they don't tour with their front band. They use a regionally successful local band as the front band in these concerts. And so we were the regionally successful front band for some big-time country acts that came through because we were a country band. And I didn't get to get stoned in Willie's bus. That would have been good. Yeah, I mean, these guys are just so cool. The country cats, they're so non-ego-driven, down-to-earth. It's like everything you thought about and heard about, even at the top level. It was really wonderful because we were working with drummers and this and that, swapping equipment out on the stage and all that. And it's just a wonderful environment. At least it was back then.
Well, that's amazing, man. I'm envious of you there playing with old Willie Nelson. I mean, did you see the guitar with the big hole in it?
Oh, yeah. We fronted for Willie. I didn't actually make music with Willie, but we did get to hang out just a little bit backstage.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but what was really great about that is we got to see these shows from backstage. So I'm peeking, I'm right back there behind Willie's drummer, who's like 90 years old, clacking along. I mean, yeah, he's great.
Okay, lastly, with your experience in poker, with the books and your views on the psychological aspect of the game, I'm wondering if I could ask you two questions about the main event real quick. First of all, what did you think of William Kassouf's speech play? How would you have handled that if you were an opponent? And B, what about Qui Win, this Baccarat so-called pro, winning the whole thing and just playing pure aggressive poker? I mean, it really was quite a display of aggression.
Well, my answers there are I don't play tournaments and I don't follow tournaments.
Okay, fair enough.
The only time I follow the main event is if I have a client in the late innings. So I really don't have any idea what you're talking about.
William Kassouf was a talkative guy, and I'm sure you run across many talkative characters. The guys who want to be table captain, they're always talking. They've always got a decision. It can grate on people's nerves. How do you handle that?
Oh, that's very easy. Just heard it all a million times, and it just doesn't bother me. It just doesn't bother me. I mean, they can talk all day long. I never talk. Well, that's part of what makes it easy for me is I don't ever say a single word when I play.
That's amazing.
And so they can talk all they want. It doesn't faze me a bit.
Man, I'd like to play like you, man. I'd like to play just in that relaxed zone. I talk. Sometimes I get irritated. I recognize that I'm getting better at it. I'm working on it. But, man, I wish I could be in that zone always,
But I'm going to clarify, and this is in Elements of Poker too. I used to talk all the time. I mean, nonstop. I was like the welcoming committee at the casino. Like a Lucky Chances, I was there all day, every day. I knew everybody. So I went from being someone who talked a lot to being someone who never says a word. And that's an interesting progression to make right there. But I'll tell you what, right now poker is super easy for me because of that.
Yeah, it'd be a nice way to play. Listen, man, I really appreciate your time. Tommy Angelo is the author of Elements of Poker. And by the way, it'd be a great Christmas gift for the poker player or the gambler in your family. His new book is Painless Poker. It's coming out early in the new year. For details on his coaching and writing and his upcoming book, you can visit TommyAngelo.com. Tommy, thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Okay, Derek. Hey, and just mention that when you're at the site, if you want to get updated on everything, you can go to the bottom of any page and join my mailing list.
Absolutely. Again, the website is TommyAngelo.com.